Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the October 6, 2020 special meeting of the Harbor Management Commission. The purpose of this meeting this evening is to consider the proposed changes to the mooring rules and procedures as per the rules of the town clerk. Special meetings can have no votes, so we will not be voting on any proposed changes this evening. It will simply be an opportunity for the commissioners to discuss and ask questions about the proposed changes. Before we begin, I would just like to say that Sam Cargill, Mark Foster, Ed Billings, Jack Hirschler,
Eric Sunman,
good, Ted Schwartzman,
Doug Metchick,
Jeff Stedman, Betty Gabriel are with us. Did I miss anyone? Harry? I know I spoke with Harry last night. He said he would check in. Okay. Just so that we're all on the same page, there's been some concern, I know, about the format that these meetings take. There's been a concern among some of our members as well as members of the public that we are not meeting in person and that at these meetings the participant members of the public are not able to offer immediate public comment. This is not a decision that anyone on this commission has made. This format comes straight from the governor's office and the first select woman's office. Anyone who is listening who is a member of the public is free to post comments via email, and that email address is hmc@fairfieldct.org. All comments received via email are included in the minutes of not only this meeting, but every meeting that we have had in this format and will have in this format since this process was mandated by the governor. So this evening there are several comments. We received several email comments from members of the public. They are already posted on the Harbor Management Commission website. If any member of the public would like to see either their letters or what other folks have said, it's on the Harbor Management Commission website. Click on Files and Documents on the right-hand side. There's a drop-down menu, and if you select Mooring Rules under Files and Documents, you will see all of the comments that we have received. As we proceed through the rules, that Ed and Jack will describe kind of what the thinking was, what the reasons were, what problems were to be solved by some of the changes. Then there'll be an opportunity for the commissioners to ask them questions, and I will at that time refer to the letters and the emails that we have received from the public. So that is pretty much the format that I think that we are going to follow this evening. I would just like to also add that these proposed rules and procedures have been on our website since about the middle of September. And I know that the commissioners received them with their agendas at our September 23rd meeting, and the rules were also attached to the agenda that was posted in the town clerk's office. So they have been out there and are available for anyone to take a look at for a while. So having completed all of that introductory business, Jack and Ed, do you want to proceed?
Sure, thank you. This is Jack Hirschler. I will take the lead here. Ed and I had a conversation about this. We're mindful that there's a lot to cover, and I think we can all agree that reviewing a document and sort of editing and asking comments and making comments and asking questions real time, doing this by telephone is suboptimal, but it's what we have to do during this COVID period. So what I would propose to do is try to describe the changes that are proposed, which appear in bold lettering on the document that's dated, draft update dated September 1, 2020, Town of Fairfield Harbor Management Commission. Sometimes we have things we've deleted. Those are shown as line through. What I'd like to do is systematically go, starting with Rule 1A, and give a little bit of a description of what these are. Ed has informed me, as our harbor master, where he would like to make his own comments relative to the proposed changes. And so with your permission, I'd like to allow him in those cases to make his comment first, and then we open it up to all the commissioners to comment, ask questions, and have a dialogue about any of these changes. I'd like to try to move as quickly as we can, but at the same time, hearing from everybody about any concerns, questions, or issues that they have on any of these changes.
Commissioner Hirschler,
again, the changes that are here reflect the work of the subcommittee that worked on this, which includes our chair, Jeff Stedman, former harbor master, Pat Carroll. Yes.
Before we get started, Jack, this is Sam Cargill. I think it's probably good for the public, understanding that public comment is very difficult during these times of COVID and all, but we need to be exhaustive in what we do to provide the public with every opportunity to provide comment. But what I think is really important before we get started here, because it is quite a bit to carry on with, and a lot of material here, and a lot of, I guess the notification to the mooring holders went out on Friday after 5. So there's a lot to absorb, and I appreciate that you and Ed are going to go through all this. But I think what is really important is the language and how we got here and what the objectives were before we get into the language, and how this document came forward. And where was the due process? So what is the subcommittee? How is the mooring committee involved? Was there opportunities for it to go back to committee for other revisions or comment from that perspective? Because I think of both those committees and or the opportunity where there's technicians and people that understand the issues and what we're trying to accomplish here. So again, it's one thing about the language, but what were the objectives and how do we get to this point?
Sam,
Let me turn it back over to Kim to do that, okay?
Yeah, I can answer that, Sam. The commission received a ship grant from the Connecticut Port Authority. I want to say 2 years ago now, and part of the plan, the purpose of the ship grant was to update the harbor management plan. And as we began to talk about what that would entail, we wanted to be sure that the rules and procedures didn't conflict with and reflected some of the changes that would be made to the harbor management plan. So, for example, one of the priorities of the commission that will be reflected in the updated plan was the addition of online mooring to manage our documents and keep track of boats in the harbor. So many of the rules and procedures, for example, talk about checks and mailing and that kind of thing, which clearly would be outdated and not relevant to use in an online electronic system. So that was the genesis of the thinking about updating the rules and procedures. In terms of the due process and in terms of this document was worked on by a subcommittee, as Jack has described, former harbor master Pat Carroll, our own harbor master. I helped out, and Jack. It had nothing to do with the mooring committee. It came as a subcommittee of the plan update committee. and it was presented first to the commissioners at our last meeting. There is no intention whatsoever to deprive the public of their opportunity to comment, and certainly after this meeting, the committee can and will be taking comments back to committee to revise, change as necessary, and report back again. There's while we would all like to be moving through the process of updating the plan and all parts of it. There's no end date in sight, especially not one if it conflicts with the concerns and the desires of the commissioners and the public. So this is not the last step. This is really the first step that the public and the commissioners have to comment and digest and say, hey, wait a minute, it's too much. We can't get through it all. We're going to have a second meeting to go over this. This really depends on what you as commissioners and what the public want to do.
Right.
And you're right. The fact that COVID limits the opportunity to meet in the Sullivan building a town hall and sit down in a big room around the table and look each other in the eye and say, this really doesn't make any sense to me. It's a shame that we can't do that, but it's not our choice, unfortunately.
Understood.
This is the process
and I think
we've been given, and it's extraordinarily difficult for us all to have to navigate through this. But it's what the times demand, and we'll do it the best we can. And if this tonight isn't enough, isn't good enough, we'll do it again. We have no other choice.
And Madam Chairman, thank you very much. And that, for the record, I really appreciate that this is the beginning of the process, and there's going to be ample time for the public and all constituents and stakeholders to make public comment or have something put into the record from that perspective. Having been an elected representative for Southport for a number of years, I know how frustrating it is that there is not the ability for people to have the forum for public comment. And then I appreciate what you've said, and I'm glad that the public that are listening can hear that as well, that this is the beginning of the process of the special meeting. There is no vote tonight, and it's just an opportunity for us all to carry on. And I know there's a lot to cover, and I didn't mean to interrupt, but I thought it was important for the record. And then the last point I will make and then I will stand down, is the objectives, because that is important. And I know in a subcommittee we discussed those, or Jack had provided them. I think there were 6 guiding principles.
Let me do that, Sam. I can walk through those, and that might be a good place to start, just to be context for the rest of our discussion.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
Okay. So when we met, as Sam said, to look at what changes to make to our existing rules and procedures, we were looking at 6 different goals and principles to focus on. The first one Kim has already talked about, which is to contemplate the migration that we did a year ago from Excel spreadsheet and paper file document retention around things related to moorings and mooring tackle and so forth, to an electronic system used by many harbors up and down the New England coast called online mooring. So we wanted to bring our rules into alignment with the fact that we've moved into a online database-based solution for our mooring administration. The second thing was to assist the harbor master in the timely issuance of permits. So in particular, when mooring becomes available, we want to follow our processes, but we don't want the allowable elapsed times for each of the steps to be so elongated that it results in moorings not getting used. So we looked at tightening up time frames where it made sense. A lot of the things that we looked at involved clarification, so making sure rules that have been there are crystal clear, and there are several examples of that as we go through this. area that we focused on was the doctrine of open to all on an equal basis. This is a public harbor, and we want to ensure fairness, and so we're being careful in several respects as we look through these rules to look at fairness issues, and we'll come across a couple of those. We wanted to be very clear about the couple of instances in our rules where we, under our rules, provide for priority assignment of moorings, to be very clear about what constitutes eligibility to receive a mooring assignment in front of other people, and what are those special rules, and what's included, what's not included with respect to those. It's another form of clarification. And then finally, as we went through the rules, we discovered that there are some outdated provisions that really related to situations that were in place and had provisions that were grandfathered, but the particular situation no longer applies to anyone, and so it was sensible to get rid of those things for which nobody ever would be applicable to no one at this point. Okay? So those were the general principles, and everything that we look at here is going to fall into one or several of those as we look at the proposed changes. Okay? So now, beginning on the first page, mooring committee definition, Rule 1A, we have added the word "at least" to how many members of the Harbor Management Commission should be on the mooring committee. It said before 2 people. We are now saying at least 2 people from the commission should be on it. And perhaps more importantly, a suggestion was made, and we've included here, that the harbor master should have the right to cast a vote on mooring committee voting matters. And Ed, you want to just weigh in on that?
Yes, thank you, Jack, and hello, everyone. Pleasure to be with you tonight. In all candor, having that sentence there, it's a great gesture, greatly appreciated by myself. I think that was suggested by one of my predecessors. But in my dealings with the mooring committee, no votes have taken place to date. It's more of an advisory position. So I'd leave it in the commission's hands whether you want to put that in there or not. It may be good to have, and I hate to be kind of wishy-washy on this, but I don't know. Jack, maybe you can clarify my thoughts.
Yeah, my sense is also that it's by consensus, and I don't want to speak for former Harbor Master Pat Carroll, but my sense of his remarks on this is it would be a nice gesture for, at least in this committee meeting where the rules that we're discussing relate to what the harbor master has to execute on a day-in, day-out basis, that if there ever were a vote, it would be nice if he could get to cast a vote, even though any decisions to vote on anything go before the full commission anyway, where the harbor master does not vote according to our rules. So I open it up for the rest of the commissioners. If you are in favor, against, whatever, have a concern about that, we're not going to be voting on any of these things, but we'd like to hear your thoughts.
This is Mark. This is Doug Metchick. I have a question. Can you please give an example on a matter that the mooring committee would vote on that the Harbor Management Commission would not be voting on? No. It's advisory. The things we think about get brought before the Harbor Management Commission. So this is really the sense of the committee, and whether if there were ever a vote on something, that the harbor master would be included in that. So what are the types of things that the mooring committee votes on?
We've always been making decisions since I've been on that committee by consensus. So, again, this is more of a gesture of, I don't recall us having a vote. Kim, I don't know if you recall.
I don't recall a vote either.
Right.
Mark, you were going to say something, Mark Foster?
Yeah, thanks. I would point out the Connecticut general statutes that set up the harbor management commissions, or perhaps it sets the rule, the harbor master. This is chapter 444A. At any rate, it says the harbor master is a non-voting member of a harbor management commission. So
right.
If he's a non-voting member of the commission, it seems he or she should be a non-voting member of any subcommittee or part of the Harbor Management Commission.
Yeah, we did discuss that, and I think the conversation was it doesn't say that a subcommittee or a committee of the commission can't have a vote for the harbor master, but that was the extent of the discussion around that point.
Anyone else have an opinion or?
Again, we're not making a decision about this today. We're just understanding what was being proposed.
Just for clarification, and Sam Cargill again, that there has never been a vote to recommend to bring something to the commissioners?
Not since I've been on it. Kim, have you in the past?
No, everything comes to when we considered the online mooring system, it started in the mooring committee, and obviously the mooring committee can't make the decision on its own, so it came before the full HMC and described the reasons why an online mooring system would be good and why this one in particular, and it was all done by consensus.
Kim, this is Jeff.
Yes, Jeff. Yes, please.
Something? But I believe that historically there were matters that were voted on by the mooring committee. I have to go back and look at that before your,
before my time.
tenure on the commission. That there were matters that required some sort of immediate action by the harbor master, and I'll go back and find out what they were. But they couldn't wait until the next commission meeting, and the mooring committee would whether you call it a consensus or a vote, that there was at least agreement that the harbor master should take a particular action. But again, I don't have a specific example right now. And Mark is quite right that the general statutes call for the harbor master to be an ex officio member of the harbor commission without vote. But we felt that since it didn't specifically apply to a committee, and that this was a matter having to do with but so yes, it could be discussed both ways. But we thought that if there was a matter that came to vote, that the harbor master should have a right to weigh in, because the decision may affect what he does, he or she does.
Yeah, Jeff, it might be useful if you can, over the course of the next week or so, if you can think of an example or and bring it to us so we have a better understanding of what the impact might possibly be.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, while you're talking, I'm going to look in the harbor management plan, because the plan calls for the establishment of the mooring committee. But yes, I'll without taking more time, I'll look for that, Jim.
Great. Okay.
Okay. The next change is in Rule 2B, the next proposed change is in Rule 2B. This merely is a new sentence that is modifying the sentence immediately before it that says every vessel in the harbor has to have a valid permit issued by the harbor master that's on a mooring, and in fact, vessels that are transient visitors to the harbor are obviously not going to have a permit, and this is just a clarification that there's an exception to the statement that everyone has a valid permit, which is that visitors don't. Any comments or questions? I know, Ed, you didn't have anything else to say on that. Anybody else? Okay. In Rule 3A, there are just in 3 generally. These are about mooring and docking records.
I do have a question.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
I do have a question on B. Sorry to jump in. My mute. I was speaking over. In this particular case, can somebody direct me or help me with the definition of a transient mooring? I'm assuming the way it's being used here, it's a proper noun.
Yeah. Yes. The town code for the harbor has a definition for transient, and one second, I'll give it to you. It says that a transient is a person traveling to the harbor management area by boat and staying for a temporary period of time. So, that's at least from the Fairfield Town Code, the definition of a transient.
But that would be a transient boater. In this case, we're talking about a transient mooring. which is different, correct?
It's a mooring used by somebody who's a transient.
Okay. I guess what I'm asking here is I would like us to clarify what that is, because my recollection when being brought up to speed on Harbor Management Commission is that the plan calls for the maintenance of a certain number of transient moorings as a proper noun.
Yep.
And so I'd like to just clarify here if we're talking about a transient mooring in the sense of the proper noun, or if we're talking about a transient mooring not as a proper noun, but a mooring that's used by a transient boater.
I see what you're saying. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Okay. Rule 3 relates to mooring and docking records, and if you scan through the changes proposed here, this is an example of contemplating the online mooring administrative system. So we've created a new Rule A, which talks about, well, you can read it for yourselves, but it's the reality of entering data into an online system instead of sending a paper application to the harbor master for a mooring permit every year. And then various other changes throughout the other sections that relate to electronic communications and maintaining updated information about your vessel throughout the year using the online system, since updates can be done real time using the online system and entering your record in the system. And I think, Ed, you were just going to comment generally about Rule 3 with your perspective as a harbor master?
Yeah, this basically is just for clarification on for the online mooring system. And as many of you have already experienced, there are updates that go out periodically, and it would be the responsibility of the mooring holder to update on when those prompts are made, such as your registration is out of date or your insurance form is out of date, so on and so forth.
This is Jeff, Ed, and I don't know if it's appropriate for me to comment on as we go through here. So if it's not, let me know. The one thought I'm looking at this on the computer screen is the term "shall." Did you determine that shall apply to everybody, including people who may not have computer skills or ability to scan documents?
Yeah, let me try to respond to that.
Yeah, I think that's going to come up in a little bit.
We're going to get to Rule 9B and D later on that have a particular exception for people who have special situations that require special arrangements with a harbor master. And that, I understand why you're asking the question here, but it's addressed in the rule that pertains to people making applications to be on the waiting list, or renewing their applications to be on the waiting list, or to renew their mooring permit application. So it's addressed, but it's not addressed right here.
All right.
And also, if I may add, this also applies to owners of docked vessels.
That's true. The requirements of docked vessel owners need to provide the harbor master with important information about the vessel in case of emergencies as well. That's not new. What's new is that they need to do it in the online mooring system, of course.
Right.
Right.
Any other questions from any of the commissioners or comments on this section? Okay. There being none, Rule 4 had no changes to it, and Rule 5 has a change about the current rule says that the people on the waiting list and the people currently assigned to moorings are shown in the Department of Public Works office in Sullivan Independence Hall, and the harbor master, in fact, has done that. But there was a discussion in our group that let's take advantage of the fact that the town has a website that's widely used by people in the town, and there's no reason we shouldn't be posting those for people to view more easily than going to the Public Works office. So we're not proposing to do it instead of, although we discussed that, we're talking about doing an addition to the posting at the Public Works office. That's 5B. 5C is another reference to the online mooring system. And I think I'd like to stop there and see if there are any other questions before we turn the page to page 4, where we get into some other questions. Any comments from anybody?
Yes, this is Eric Sunman. I had a quick question about the list of names. So would a list of names of those on the waiting list be posted on the town website then?
Ed?
Yes, they should be.
Is there any concern of any privacy issues regarding that? Will some people not want to have their names posted on a website? Is that necessary? I don't know.
Again, this is a fluid document. We certainly can discuss that. But those names have traditionally been posted at DPW, so the names are out there.
But you'd have to physically go and look instead of look online.
That's correct.
Right.
Yes.
So Ed, maybe you can cover on a list of people on the waiting list. It shows the position they are on the waiting list and their name and any other information, or is that it?
I believe that's it.
Yeah. So I don't know. I hear you, Eric. I just
it doesn't.
No, I appreciate the transparency, except I just I don't know how some people feel about having their names posted on the website.
Absolutely.
Well,
no, I
agree
with you.
This is Doug.
It's pretty much bare bones. Position on the wait list and a name. We can further disguise that. If you want, like first initial, last name, or something like that. But I agree with the
This
privacy.
is Doug. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hear you.
I would just make a note that I believe the town for the South Benson Marina wait list publishes the list, but it's only done by the number that's assigned to the person who's on the list, not with anything that would identify them specifically. They use account numbers. So we may want to look into how it's done with the town for their other lists, and any wait list, whether it's the marina or somewhere else.
Okay.
I overlooked the D in Section 5. We removed the words town of. There was a discussion about the fact that people who have a vessel registered in the state of Connecticut don't have to necessarily live in Connecticut, and so therefore we thought it was just easier to just take out the words town of and just say basis of residence. You still don't discriminate, but these people could live out of state even, and that would still be okay for them to fall into that. Okay. Moving to G on page 4. This has to do with a definition around total vessel length. And the discussion that we had in the committee was really aimed at giving the harbor master clarification. It wasn't so much of whether it should or should not include these appendages, the bowsprits, bow rollers, stern platforms, the various things that could be off the back of a boat as well, but more of giving Ed something more specific than 50 feet without a real description of what we mean by that. So we've received a couple of public comments asking us to take another look at this one. One option for us would be to put the word not between shall include, which still gives clarity to the harbor master and certainly addresses all the concerns that we've seen through today at the beginning of the meeting from the public about this one. Again, we were just trying to do something to provide more clarity to the harbor master. We weren't, I think, speaking for the subcommittee, we weren't so concerned about whether it did or did not include. We were just trying to give him something more specific. I don't know if anybody else on the subcommittee would like to weigh in on that. Ed?
Well, essentially, what I will be doing is going on the number that is listed on your vessel registration from state of Connecticut. You know, if it's a 50-foot vessel, then it's a 50-foot vessel. Yes, there may be a bow roller on there. There may be a short sprit, but as Jack said, total vessel length as per motor vehicle. I mean, it pretty much resolves it. Some boats, like the smaller power boats, sometimes the swim platform is included in the overall length. Sometimes it's not, depending on how the boat is constructed. So I think just to simplify it, if DMV says your boat is 49 feet and 10 inches, then, that's it.
Ed, this is Ted.
Go ahead, Ted.
Could we say that? So instead of saying total vessel length shall include or not include, could we just say total vessel length will be the length as recognized by, whatever you just said?
Yeah, on the registration, huh?
Yeah, whatever's on your registration.
Fine, yeah.
Okay.
I think that would just simplify everything. I mean, if somebody wants to, have the words, grandfathered in there, because we know that there are several boats that are a few inches over 50 feet, but that's not including, that is including sprit or anything else. But to answer your question,
for whatever it's worth, having run a boat builder and working with naval architects and others on this, we would use terminology of length overall or primary hull when determining the length of a boat, if that's helpful.
Sure.
Yeah. So we're going to take that back, Kim, and maybe rework our definition. Again, we were looking for clarity for the harbor master, not trying to create a problem with.
And we had 3 comments, three emails that commissioners should have received that are posted on the website. John Levinson, Christopher Rosso, and Will Urich were concerned about this provision.
Okay, so I think we've heard from everyone on that one. On H, can I go on?
Yep.
On H, we're adding a sentence that encourages the harbor master to be careful where there are applications to have special consideration for issuance or renewal of any permit to ensure that the applicant is not attempting to circumvent any of our rules. So there are only 2 situations where people can be given priority on assignment of a mooring permit in the harbor for these special situations. And one is in the case of a commercial fisherman, and the second case is for people asserting riparian rights. These would be waterfront property owners following our rules, asserting riparian rights. And those people could be issued a permit before people who've been waiting in the waiting list for sometimes years. And so we wanted to encourage the harbor master to be extra careful before issuing permits in those 2 situations. Any comments from anyone?
Yeah, just I don't know how to put this. There's some phrases in here that are not well defined. Due care, special consideration. I don't know what those are.
I think special consideration is already existing in the harbor management plan. Jeff, is that right?
I have to go look and see, Jack. I'm not sure about this.
Pretty sure that's where that word language comes from. The due care, we think that's our own language, and we could come up with something better perhaps than that, but just to be careful.
Right, and I guess I know what legitimate is, but I think I know what you have in mind. I don't have any objection to what I'm seeing. My comment is if you could tighten it up to kind of hit the nail on the head a little better.
Okay.
And clear up the vague terms would be good.
I agree. This is Sam Cargill. I mean, I understand the spirit of what this edition is, but it's all about how it is interpreted 10 years from now or 5 years from now until we do the next rules and regulations. So special consideration and due care to me as well. So if it goes back to the plan itself, but I do agree some way to tighten it up, understanding exactly what the intent is now.
Yeah, because someone might argue that should be just the normal way of applying the regulations in the first place. That you carefully apply them, and it goes without saying that you try to avoid people trying to circumvent them. But we can, I think that can be tightened up.
Okay. The next place we had a change was in J, and I think as you look at J and K, and we'll get to some of these, but there's a spirit in some of these coming up here, J and K in particular, where we're trying to tighten up time frames. So this is an example of the thing I talked about in our goals and principles. So we're trying to make sure that we go through the right process about offering moorings to people who have been on the waiting list, but we tighten up how long it takes for each of the steps in that process so that we don't end up with moorings being unused because people are stretching the time frames to make their decisions. So all that we're trying to do here is a little time frame tightening to ensure that by the time the boating season begins, the harbor master is in a good position to have issued permits to people if they wanted to accept them, and if not, go on to the next person, giving them the allowable time to do that. Does that make sense?
Any questions?
I would agree. It's simply stating it's just trying to speed things up because by the time I recognize a mooring becomes available, it could be at the at the end of February, early March. So if I'm waiting 2 weeks or a little more to hear from from the first person on the wait list that I contact, and then he or she takes another 2 weeks to respond, then now all of a sudden you're looking at the end of March and people are making other accommodations for their boat for the summer. So as Jack said, we're just simply trying to speed this up to facilitate those people waiting on the wait list.
Any other comments, questions on this one? Okay, moving on to K.
I have a question on
Go ahead.
Regarding this from the 15 days to 7 days to accept the location. Is that a really short? Is that cutting it really close, or or is that doable? Is that a doable number?
This is to say that you would like it, not to be on it or something. This is to say that yes, I would like. You get contacted by the harbor master. Do you need more than a week to say yes or no? I'd like to have that assigned to me.
And so how is the contact made? Is it return receipt requested, signature required? What if it's the mail is lost, or someone's in Florida and they just came back, or and it's been in the P.O. box? How do you ensure that person's going to get that information?
Yeah, they're all sent out by email, and I hear your comment because that is a popular time to take vacations or go to Florida. But most people do carry at least their cell phone with them or their laptop, so they do have access to email.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Well, I would be a terrible example because I've been known to get back to people after 7 days on my email.
Well, let's not go there, Sam, now.
I just think that, I agree with Eric. I know exactly what you're trying to do, and it makes sense. To me, 7 days seems tight. I have a problem with the other changes, but that's just my view, but I'm not going to die on this hill.
Now, if I might insert one other comment. If you're on the wait list and you're in the top 10 people on the wait list, you know that there is a distinct chance of you being contacted. So I think you would, and actually this past year, people contacted me first to say they were either, where am I? I'm definitely interested, or with COVID, of course, we had several people that, that we jumped over. But you're aware that you're getting close to being awarded a mooring spot. So I don't know. If I send it out on a Friday and, it doesn't come back for 8 days or 9 days, I take that into consideration. And I've also followed up with secondary emails to make sure, and or phone calls. I believe I've done my due diligence in trying to contact everyone who's capable of being awarded a mooring.
Ed, this is Jeff. Again, I apologize for interrupting. What about the instance where the person may not own a boat and would wait until if he or she gets notified, then they would make every effort to acquire a boat? Does that? And I don't know anything about buying a boat, but would that give them? I remember talking about that at one time years ago. That 30 days. someone could say,
believe
okay,
it
I'm
is
going to
30
get a boat,
days.
but I can't get it in 14 days, or I can't have the...
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good point, Jeff, and I appreciate you bringing it up, because that actually happened this year. There was one mooring awarded, and the person did not. I mean, it was surprising because, as I said before, due to COVID, quite a high number of people elected to defer to next year. So that, I believe this person was in spot maybe 16 or 17. I forget exactly, so don't quote me on that. But he was unaware that it's like, wow, I'm that close. It's like, okay, I'll go buy a boat, which that's what he did. But it did take, I think it took a little more than 30 days. But he knew what size boat he wanted, and so we began the process.
I think by making these rule changes, there's at least an expectation that we're trying to tighten things up here. Obviously, in a situation where something's in flux like that, the harbor master could use some judgment. But we're setting an expectation that people should be responding expeditiously one way or the other, so that it can be offered to somebody who wants to take advantage of the mooring.
I totally understand that. I'm just curious, though, again, and we've got a lot to go through, so I don't want to hold us all up, but if you have 7 days to accept, and then in the following sentence is failure to respond within 14 days to any written offer, I'm sort of confused. Because they have 7 days to accept and describe the next, or define the next sentence, sort of, for us, Ed.
Ed?
I'm sorry, Sam. Can you repeat the question?
Just on the, and again,
the difference between the 7 and the 14 days waiting period?
Yeah, and then you go to the 14 days. I mean, look, we all know what you're trying to do. Totally support that, but then it sort of contradicts. I don't know.
Yeah, again, this is language that we've had for years. We're just trying to tighten time frames up here. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, me personally, I'd just like to reduce the time period by a little bit. I mean, this is a document that is, will need some adjustment. But I mean, this scenario that we're painting here in line item K, did happen a number of times this year.
We haven't gotten to that.
We're in J. We're still in J.
Oh, in J. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, for whatever it's worth, it seems to me that given the length of time that members are on the list, that they're probably not in the younger part of their lives, and probably have lots of things going on. That 7 days to me seems like a short period for somebody at that stage in their life, wherever they are, to respond. It also seems a little inconsistent with the others, where all 14. So I also support the notion of trying to shorten this up. I just think we should look at what would be reasonable from the perspective of the person on the list.
So it sounds like the focus is mostly on that 7 days versus the original 15 that people are questioning. Okay, we'll come back to that. Let's move ahead if it's okay with everyone.
Okay.
That's fine.
Ed opened the door to K. Let me try and quickly walk through what K is all about. K is, first of all, this is about when somebody gets offered a mooring from the waiting list by the harbor master, and we're putting in the word suitable through here that was missing before, because the harbor master is distinguishing between people on the waiting list for which the available mooring is not suitable. So in our harbor, there are many moorings that might not be suitable for the person's particular vessel based on depth and natural conditions in the harbor. And so the harbor master, in consultation with Jeff Engborg, who's managing our mooring tackle, makes decisions about what kind of boat could properly fit in that location. And so the harbor master is making judgments about the suitability of an available mooring for a particular vessel. And so that's why the words suitable are in here. We're also noting that if you are offered a suitable mooring from the waiting list, and it's suitable clearly for your vessel, and you don't want that, we have a rule around what we're calling strike one. And we have controls in the online mooring system to manage this, so it's being managed properly now automatically. So if the harbor master makes you an offer from the waiting list and you want to defer for any reason, that's fine. You can't do it twice, or you go to the bottom of the waiting list for turning down a suitable mooring more than once. However, what we noticed is, and it happened this last year, somebody on the waiting list was offered a mooring in the springtime. Later in the summer, another suitable mooring came up available after they had already said they didn't want it this year the first time, and we wanted to be sure that that doesn't count against the person as the second strike and they go to the bottom of the waiting list. That doesn't seem to make sense. So what we're doing here is adding a new addition here that says in the calendar year in which you've already told the harbor master once that you're not ready to accept a suitable mooring location, if another one becomes available and you say no again, that doesn't count against you as a strike. And so that's now been set up in the online mooring system as a rule also. So we just wanted to align a fairness issue with the way we execute that strike one, strike two rule so that the system is aligned with that. So, and this is just a matter of fairness to the person who didn't want it. If they didn't want it in April, it's reasonable to assume they very well may not want it again come June for a different mooring location. That makes sense? That's what this is trying to accomplish. Any comments, questions? Okay. Moving on to L just below, this is another fairness issue. We get a lot of people, dozens of people on the waiting list. There's a question in our application for people on the waiting list if they have a South Benson Marina slip already, and there's no problem with that being on the waiting list, but when the time comes someday when they are offered a mooring permit, should our rules allow a household to have one of their boats in South Benson and another boat in town mooring in Southport Harbor and other people who don't have a boat anywhere? So this is another one of these fairness questions. This is all new. We're thinking that this is a fairness issue, and I'd like to let Ed weigh in and then open up to everybody else.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's based on the fairness and equal access for everyone. If you have a mooring or a slip, then it was deemed that it would be fair to open up whichever you choose to vacate to someone else instead of the same person or same household having two individual moorings.
Or a slip and a mooring.
A slip and a mooring, yes.
We indicated in this one that anyone so situated at this point by December 31st, we wouldn't deny if there's anyone who has both in their household, we wouldn't deny the renewal of those permits going forward, but those people are grandfathered. But on a go-forward basis, since we're already asking the question of people on the waiting list now, if they have one, the harbor master could have a conversation with them and tell them, look, someday if I get to the point where I can offer you a mooring, you guys should make a decision because there's people behind you that don't have any boat in any town flipper or mooring.
So this point is a very reasonable point, and I support it. The language of it, I think, is interesting in the use of the word if in the first revised sentence because it might suggest some sequencing or something. So I would suggest it read, no household member shall be assigned a Southport mooring and a mooring in South Benson, because it's quite possible that somebody holds a mooring in one place, comes up on the list for another, and needs to, not renew one and redo another, and the sequencing could affect that. I could envision a scenario where somebody has renewed with the town and then gotten notification about their mooring permit, but they've already renewed because of the simple timing.
And if they cancel the other one, then they no longer have it, right? I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying. So you're saying
agreed. So they would need to cancel one they already renewed, but this language reads if they have a permit, and so I'm suggesting we change the language that simply says they shall not be assigned. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I'm totally supportive of the point.
Got it. Okay. Anybody else on this one? Okay, moving on to N at the bottom of this page. Now we're getting into people who are asserting riparian rights. So as I mentioned a bit ago, one of the two categories for people who have priority assignment through the harbor master under our longstanding rules for a town mooring are people who are waterfront property owners who are seeking a permit to have a mooring offshore their property in the harbor. And what we're saying in N is that people who own waterfront property that is contiguous to water that's not really suitable for a mooring location due to natural conditions aren't eligible to, in common terms, to jump over 60 or more people waiting on the waiting list to get a mooring in front of them. So that's what N is saying. And then we go into a bit more detail in the next section. So I don't know if you want to talk about this here or wait till we get into the next section. It goes into a bit more detail on what we mean by these areas. Any comments here? Hearing none, let me just move on, and we'll get to.
I think, Jack, you should move on to the next section and then come back to it.
Got it.
Or
yeah, okay, we can do that.
In the aggregate, because this is an interesting issue and one of great contention in the village. So
sure.
Carry on.
I mean, this is one that the Commission has talked about on and off for several years. So this is not sort of a new topic, but we felt like updating the rules. It was time to address this. So. And 2i, the harbor master should consider if the person who owns waterfront properties dock, to the extent they have a dock, provides suitable access to the harbor in making a decision on whether to give them a mooring permit in addition to them having a dock. So this is an issue of fairness as well. So the sort of doctrine is that people with riparian rights or waterfront property rights to the water should have reasonable access to the water for vessels, for example, but it doesn't entitle them to have both a dock that's suitable for their vessel and also a mooring asserting riparian rights. It's one or the other. And so what we're saying here is the harbor master needs to make a judgment. Each case is going to be different. We're leaving it up to the harbor to decide. And moreover, we're proposing that anybody who has previously been issued a town mooring plus has a dock that's suitable for their vessel can renew theirs without question if that situation was in place before December 31st. So a grandfathering provision for anybody so affected before that. But this is sort of rooted in an idea of fairness. How can there be 60 people on the waiting list or more and have one person who has both a dock and a mooring in the town offshore their property, both of which are suitable for their vessel to get out to the sound? Comments on this one?
Jeff again. This is a matter that we've discussed for a number of years because of the lack of clarity in the harbor management plan. Now, the harbor management plan has a policy that each riparian property owner will be limited to one dock and or mooring immediately offshore of his or her property, provided it doesn't create a hazard to navigation. So I think I know what was intended back then, but that's has been subject to different interpretations over the years. So I think this is one example when Sam talked or asked at the beginning of the meeting what's the purpose of, what are some of the goals to achieve. Clarifying that one dock and or mooring in the mooring rules, I think, was one of the objectives that we've had for a long time. And again, it's particularly important because of the limited mooring locations. So if the harbor master, the intent is to determine that a dock by a property owner provides reasonable access, the matter would be that instead of providing that property owner also with a mooring, that the limited mooring space would be assigned to someone else.
Right.
But I think this is something we've tried to address for a number of years, and now we're trying to do that.
Right.
Trying to clarify it.
Any other comments on 2i? Okay, let me go on to 3 and 4 as a sort of a combined set, because I think that's the right way to think about them. The 3i is saying that somebody who has waterfront property who got a mooring permit on a priority basis, in other words, jumping in front of the people on the wait list to get a mooring in front of them, can also now have a place on the waiting list without assertion of riparian rights. In other words, have the spot on the waiting list waiting their turn like people who don't have waterfront property. Why are we suggesting that? Because of number 4. So the IV, or 4, right below that, property owners who obtain their permit on a priority basis under this rule cannot renew their mooring permit if they no longer own the property that allowed them to effectively jump in front of everybody on the waiting list. So the notion here that we talked about is you could imagine if properties turned over on the waterfront, you could have one person after another who previously owned the waterfront property in the harbor and took all of the town moorings, or many of the town moorings, only to have the next person moving and take another town mooring in front of everybody on the waiting list. And it seemed like a sort of a logical gap in our thinking to allow somebody who doesn't any longer own the house to maintain the mooring that they got in front of everybody else after they moved away from their house. And so by allowing them to be on the waiting list, if time passes and they're offered a mooring from the waiting list, having waited their turn, the mooring that they originally got the permit for by jumping in front of people essentially converts to a mooring like anybody who lives anywhere not with waterfront property, and whether they live there or don't live there, they could keep that mooring for as long as they wanted to renew the mooring permit. Does that make sense? 3 and 4 go together. Any comments? Okay, and then going back to the how does this fit with the previous section that we were looking at under N, we're clarifying 2 places within the harbor management area that the town owns all the mooring tackle that's being placed other than the North Anchorage mooring tackle. And so we're saying in 5 that north of the North Anchorage area, where it gets very shallow and dredged, there are no mooring locations offshore that property in that area. So that's not a place that's suitable to be putting moorings. They end up getting pretty muddy in there, that area. And then similarly, people who live on, say, Pequot Avenue near Southport Beach, we're not interested as a Harbor Management Commission in putting the kind of tackle that would be necessary to hold a vessel in a hurricane out in open waters on the Sound, but still is in the harbor management area. So here we're saying there aren't any mooring locations offshore those properties. Those people, of course, could apply through DEEP and with the town for a dock to be installed off their property, but the issue is that the town would own the tackle if it were a mooring, and I think our view is we want to protect the town from having exposure to being asked to do that and protect the harbor master in instances where we were asked to do that. Okay, understood. That's what 5 and 6 are right there. All right, and you can see that 5 and 6 relate to that previous thing, N, about contiguous to what people have waterfront property, but it's not in a part where that's suitable to put moorings offshore. Those folks would need to wait on the waiting list like everybody else on the waiting list. There's no mooring locations offshore their property.
Jack, again, it's Jeff. With regard to this provision for waterfront property owners who now have a dock and a mooring, would they be grandfathered into keeping to enable them to keep the mooring that they have should they relocate it, or would this be retroactive to those owners as well? Would you want to have a...
Two little I, that rule is the entirety, if I'm reading it correctly, it's the entirety of this whole rule, not that, so it would be, it's not the section of the rule, I think it's the entire rule. I don't know if others have a different view. So I think the answer is yes, they'd be entitled to do it, if they currently are. This grandfathering provision applies generally here.
Okay, I see it. Prior to December 31.
Right, the last sentence of the little I, 2 little I. Yeah.
Right.
Number 2, yeah.
Any comments, concerns, worries about this one? Okay, in O, just delete that. There's a line out. That was because the 11C doesn't really have any applicable people in the harbor anymore, so it didn't need a reference to 11C because 11C doesn't have anything in it anymore. Okay? A technical point. Top of page 7, we're on B, and this is similar to what we just talked about, people with riparian rights. somebody can jump in front of everybody on the wait list because our harbor management plan says that we should give priority to professional commercial fishermen, and we're saying a professional commercial fisherman might not always want to be a professional commercial fishermen. Let's make a way for them to be on the waiting list and convert the mooring that they got in front of everybody else to a mooring they don't have to give up if they stop their fishing career. So this is a expansion of their right to keep their mooring and renew it. If they come up on the waiting list, they can switch over and not lose it if they decide to stop fishing commercially. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Concerns or comments on that change? Okay, moving on to 8. We have a sort of a definitional thing of what do we mean by a person. So there's a footnote there that's a person who's alive and a single person, not some other non-natural entity. And then another reference to the online mooring system, which is just an update. Another reference in E further down to online mooring. And there's also an expectation that the insurance and registration are current. Not just past liability insurance, but that it's current insurance on the boat. We're making a provision for online payment because, as everybody knows, you now have an option if you want to pay by credit card using PayPal through the online mooring system. So that's part of that section as well. I've taken together any comments on 8 or A and E. These are mostly technical changes.
I have one small comment on footnote number 8.
Yeah.
I'd suggest we revise the word single to the word one.
Okay. Kim, did you catch that?
I got it.
Okay, good. Okay. Let me also say, Michael Nishbal sent a comment in advance relative to 8E. But I think it was a little confusing. This section relates to people who are renewing a mooring permit, not to people on the wait list. And his concern was that people might not know what vessel that they are going to have if they're on the wait list. This isn't about people on the wait list. These are people who already have a mooring that they've been keeping a boat on and the documentation that they have to provide. And in the online mooring system, people on the wait list are not required to have a boat or have information about a boat. We do ask them for information about the prospective boat they're thinking about, so it helps the harbor master to know whether an upcoming available mooring might be suitable for that vessel, but they're not required to submit that information. Okay. On page 8, we have a little bit of, in F, we have a little bit of a language change. Instead of saying credited against, we say credited toward, which I think is just better English. And most importantly, we are suggesting the introduction of in addition to people paying $50 to be on the waiting list, that is applied under our rules towards the first year's annual mooring permit fee under our rules when they get offered a mooring permit at some point. We're suggesting in addition to that, on an annual basis, as long as people are on the waiting list, that there is a reasonable and non-refundable small administrative fee. And the thinking for this is twofold. Number one, it discourages people from just being on the waiting list for the sake of being on the waiting list and not really serious about wanting a mooring, and so they just take up space, and then the harbor master has to pursue them. When their name comes up, a de minimis fee might discourage some of that activity. More importantly, because of the online mooring system, we have a per-record fee that we've agreed to pay, and by not having a fee for people who are waiting on the waiting list to cover that small annual fee for people's records on the waiting list, including the people who are on the waiting list on online mooring, then the people who are paying for mooring permit fees are in effect subsidizing the people who are on the waiting list. And so we're suggesting that we impose a very small fee that covers that annual charge we get from online mooring for a record for people being on the waiting list. This would be new. Any comments? Ed, you didn't want to make a comment here. Any comments on F?
Yeah, and Jack, it's Jeff again. As we talked about, we just have to figure out the proper way to set that fee so that we're compliant with the state statute and the town code,
right.
Which talks about the commission having the authority to make a recommendation for a fee for an activity within the scope of the plan to be set by the legislative body. So we just have to, maybe we can talk with the town attorney about the best way to set that fee.
Right. Right.
It just may not be able to do it. The commission may not be able to do it itself. It may.
Right.
All right.
So I think what we're saying here is this is where we like to go, and it'd be, for today's conversation, it'd be really useful to get people's reaction to this notion of covering the small charge we get for online mooring per record every year to apply to the waiting list people. For the people who are paying fees to the town for their mooring permits, we can sort of absorb that at this point. No comments?
If I can weigh in just for a second.
Yes.
I did have to chase I was going to say quite a few, but I will say quite a few people last year. Granted, this was our first year of online mooring, but I had to chase quite a few people. Are you still interested in being on the wait list? And some of them said no. Most said yes, but they were unaware of how to go about just renewing that application. So I think this would also encourage people to remain more active, in their wait list and wait time.
Right, exactly. Okay, in 9B, we get to that question that came up much earlier in our call, which was around what happens to people who are, for whatever reason, unable to be entering their renewal application for the mooring permit in the case of B, and then a little bit further below, same exact issue for waiting list applicants. If they can't do it online for any reason, they have to explain what the story is to the harbor master and make some arrangements that works for the harbor master to get that taken care of. What folks need to understand is we don't have two different, a paper version of record keeping and an online system. The online system is the only system as of a year ago that the town is using and the harbor master is using to maintain records for mooring tackle and also for mooring permit records and for the waiting list. And as Ed reminds us, also for the docked vessels in the harbor. So there's only one place to keep it on the online mooring system. If folks don't enter it themselves or with the help of their children or grandchildren, then it's left to Ed to enter it for them. It's just more work for the harbor master. So we are leaving an avenue for people to explain their hardship, but Ed's worked hard with folks to strengthen their relationship with their grandchildren by asking them to get a little help from their grandchildren to enter their records in the online mooring system, and that's worked pretty nicely. Ed, you want to say anything else?
Well, that last statement that you made, and I think maybe it was either Ted or Sam mentioned, regarding the wait period, answering, for wait lists and applications, et cetera. I did make the suggestion to several people that, who are, let's say, mildly technologically impaired, if that might be the PC way to go about it. But I said, do you have any children or grandchildren who are familiar or who just have a laptop and they can do it? And it was just a great suggestion because this one individual got back to me. It's like, I had the most interesting time with my granddaughter. I hadn't had that type of interaction in many years, and so thank you for the suggestion. I now know a little bit more about online mooring, but we'll employ her next year for the same thing. So, there are ways to do this without, sending all of your material to me or, either by snail mail or email, and, there were a number of each. And then, I have to do it, for the individual applicant.
Okay, so moving on. C is just update the language to be clearer about the intent. So I don't know if there are comments on that quick change on C. And D is just what we talked about with respect to mooring permit, renewals, and talk to the harbor master if you're having a trouble from a technology standpoint, and the deadlines apply there. What we discovered going through this is that we inadvertently didn't have a rule that actually talked about renewing the mooring waiting list applications, even though we were doing that every year. So we've added D because it was just an accidental omission in the past to the notion that everything needs to get renewed. Moving on to
before we
11.
move on to
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's okay. We did have a public comment from two current mooring holders who wanted us to allow them to submit all the documents to add to the harbor master by U.S. mail. So there are some folks out there who are still requesting the ability to mail in their documents. So.
Right. It does, and the sort of the provisions as we proposed here, I think, provide for that conversation to occur with the harbor master, and this would sort of leave it to him to work with them on a case-by-case basis to figure out whether that makes sense.
Right.
Right. Again, it would just require the harbor master to do their data entry instead of them.
Right.
I think that from some of the communications that I saw and others can read when they look online at all the communications we've gotten, it seemed like people didn't understand that everything is going to be in the online mooring system. The only question is whether you're going to put in your own or you're going to ask the harbor master to do it for you. But it's all going into that system. It's the only system.
It's all going to be online.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, 11. This is around the topic of transferring of mooring permits, vessels, and locations. There's a quick change about the fact that if somebody doesn't own the vessel anymore, then the permit expires immediately. And there was some language in the past about people entering into partnership agreements. We had a conversation about this. Our permits under our rules are issued to one person. There's one person's name on the waiting list. When that person's name comes up, that one person is issued the permit. When there's a partnership, there may be a partnership in owning the boat, but the permit is only in the name of one person, not the partnership. And we thought leaving that bottom line in 11A in there just created confusion because literally the permit is only in one person's name. So that's why the strikeout at the bottom of 11. Any comments on that at all? 11A? 11C has been removed entirely because it mostly related to a grandfathering of people there's nobody in that situation anymore. We had a pretty detailed conversation and concluded nobody's left that would have fallen subject to that. But we did create the D section that follows on the next page, which specifically addresses the notion that people in the North Anchorage can be transferred out of the North Anchorage into a town mooring if their name comes up on the waiting list. And so just to explicitly spell that out. That was sort of part of C, but not all of C, so we just created a new section, D. Okay? Any questions on that? Moving on to 13, we struck in 13A and B and privileges, mostly feeling we didn't need the and privileges. The point was made without that. And that continues on to the top of page 11. There's more privileges at the end of top of page 11. Any comments on that? Concerns? Moving on to Rule 15 on the bottom of page 11. Now that we move to the online mooring system, the thinking here is that in many other harbors, the traditional decals are no longer being used because the harbor master has a online database that he can take with him as he's patrolling the harbor. And in some of these harbors, they found it unnecessary and an added expense to send decals through the mail to have people put on their boats because the harbor master in those communities had found it reasonable to just sort of match up the boat on the mooring against the record that he's got sitting in front of him as he's out doing his patrolling. And they felt in those situations that the decal wasn't necessary. We aren't ready to dispose of our decal as a commission yet. We haven't talked about that, but we wanted to sort of set the table if we decided to do that by not having to go back to our rules and updating them. So we put some if required in here to say that it leaves the door open to use the technology to avoid an expensive mailing that we do every year to mail decals to people. Does that make sense? Comments, concerns? Okay. On the top of page 12, we're on 16, the rule about ownership of mooring tackle. And here we just did some language cleanup in 16A in the first line 2 and line 3, and then recognize that today the rules are that the town, except for the tackle in the North Anchorage, is all owned by the town. And so we're just doing a bit of cleanup here on antiquated language that doesn't really apply anymore. And similarly, B doesn't need to exist anymore for that reason as well. And that's it for 16A and B. Any comments on either of those? Okay. Turning to page 13, B, this is about where there is an exception to charging a mooring tackle maintenance charge. And 3 doesn't apply because there's no privately owned mooring tackle anymore. So that's why that's been removed. So it's just a consistency issue. Any comments on that? 19 IV 4, the little sub 4 there, introduces a new reason for the harbor master to consider revocation of a mooring permit, and there was some discussion about this. Ed, you were going to weigh in on this addition of this failure to use a vessel for its design purpose addition.
Right. Granted, everyone knows this is my first year in this position, but a vessel for its design purpose is designed to be used, whether it's a sailboat or a powerboat. The moorings of Southport Harbor are valuable to all of us, and so my feeling is those moorings should not be used as a summer storage facility in which a boat can barely make it to the mooring, doesn't move for extended periods of time, sometimes the entire summer. And so I don't believe, going back to one of our statements, is that I don't think that's fair to anyone else on the waiting list just to see a boat stored out in the middle of Southport Harbor that's never used, or perhaps not used for its, as number 4 says, its designed purpose, which is either sailing or powering.
Any comments or concerns about vessels being stored on a mooring that don't look like they're ready to be used for their design purpose? No comments? Okay. Let's move on. The next rule is Rule 20, which is the rule regarding transient moorings. And Rule 20 is split into 2 sections. Rule 20A concerns transient moorings that are in the town mooring field, and 20B deals with transient moorings that are in the commercial North Anchorage managed by Pequot Yacht Club. And here we're looking to the group to clarify what we believe were the rules and add additional color. This is a rule, Kim, that we've gotten a number of comments. I don't know if you want to address comments, and then we can have discussion about the proposed changes.
No, let's go ahead and I'll just say that the comments come from Gardner Grant, Christopher Rossell, Pequot Yacht Club, but that related to the Part B of this rule. But let's go ahead and deal with Part A, and
okay.
And then,
right. So in A, the main point here is that we thought it made sense, if we're going to have an A and a B, that the rules should be the same in terms of duration between the ones that are inside the Pequot Yacht Club, commercial North Anchorage mooring area, and the rest of the town mooring. So the 3 town transient moorings would be changing under our suggestion from 3 consecutive days to 14 days during the calendar year. However you'd like to spend them. You can visit us for 14 days in a row, or you can visit us a day at a time for 14 days, or any combination thereof. But the notion here is that visitors can visit on the town moorings for up to 14 days per calendar year. Let me just say the subject of Rule 20, just to be clear, is short-term use of transient moorings in Southport Harbor by unpermitted vessels. So the word transient, defined in the Oxford Dictionary, is a person who's staying or working in a place for only a short time. That's pretty similar to the language that we see in the definitions in the town code. In an effort to clarify the rule, the proposed language defines the 14-day rule to mean 14 total days per season, with no prior approval required from the harbor master for any exception to that. In the case of 20B, Pequot Yacht Club has interpreted the existing 14-day rule to mean that any yacht club member's boat without an assigned mooring permit can be on a mooring in the North Anchorage for as long as the entire season, as long as the boat is not on any particular mooring for more than 14 consecutive days, and such use is not subject to approval of the harbor master, by the harbor master. We need to work through what to do with respect to 20 transient moorings for visitors, 20A, 20B, and the proposal here is to have, in both cases, visitors be transients, which is, I think, what transients are meant to be. Comments?
Jack, with respect to, this is Jeff, with respect to paragraph A, I think that's pretty clear that that's an implementation of a policy in the harbor management plan. The plan calls for a minimum, and I'm reading this, of 3 transient mooring locations with mooring tackle in place to be available at all times near the Pequot Yacht Club. And then, among other things, it goes on to say that the Commission may impose reasonable limits on the duration and frequency of use of transient mooring locations by an individual vessel. So I think that paragraph A adds clarity to that policy and applies a restriction or a duration.
A time frame.
Time frame. So I think that's the question is whether it should be 14 days total, but that's clearly, I think, based on a policy in the harbor management plan that there should be 3 mooring locations at all times available for visiting boaters.
Right. And just for people listening to tonight's meeting, that's in place and functioning today.
Yes.
Right. Other comments on 20A? And I think 20B is a parallel rule. That, just to be clear, the 20B rule has had the 14 days before, but the language that's historically been there is 14 consecutive days. We are suggesting, these are for visitors, so we're suggesting it just be 14 days per calendar year. And more than that, with the prior approval of the harbor master and the permission of the Pequot Yacht Club. So if there are reasons, exigent circumstances, then certainly that could be considered. But again, this is the rule around visitors.
And this is Harry, but I think that's been in place for many years.
Yes, this rule is long-standing. And there was a minor one-word addition change for some clarification. Help me out, Jeff, I think 5 years ago. But it was essentially unchanged since its inception, this rule.
And then for the, as part of the discussion, I think that, and maybe can't complete it now, but to understand this, what we might want to get at here, also the newer commissioners need to understand the history of how this mooring area came to be used by the yacht club, and how it was once a federal anchorage, and part of the solution to the long-standing conflicts for almost 10 years was to defederalize that what was previously a federal anchorage and allow the yacht club to obtain its state and federal permits to maintain its own mooring field. So the use of this area here, when we're thinking about how best to manage it, is we also need to recognize that the sort of the special conditions here, that the yacht club has its own permits, and also I think the newer members need to think also about the memorandum of agreement between the town and the yacht club, which sets. I don't want to go into all of this now. I'm sorry to get into the history of it, but it's all part of how we got to where we are today, and how we want to manage this area and be consistent with also the state and federal permits that have been applied here, or that the yacht club has here. So at some point, if people, we have some of the background information on this. If some of the members want to look at that, prior to the next time we discuss this. But yeah, this is an interesting one because of the state and federal permits that give the yacht club certain rights within this mooring field. And then in exchange for those rights, the yacht club has an agreement with the town to provide certain boating services to the public. So we're trying to achieve a balance here. And even though there is a commercial, I shouldn't say, there are the state and federal permits for this mooring area, that does not excuse or exclude the yacht club from having to get the harbor master permits as well. But anyway, I don't want to go on too long because I could talk about this because this took 10 years to solve some of these issues that appeared in the mid 1980s.
Yeah, and can I just jump in, Jeff, because this to me is a very important part of this document, this living and breathing document that does need to be updated. And, I think there's, if we go back to the doctrine of fairness, the opportunity for the club to operate, essentially a business that, provides so many services to the harbor and to the community itself. And I for the record, I think that people should recognize that because this is a defederalized, these are the 51 moorings of the club, and I think that they're almost sacrosanct to the club. And I hate to be blunt from that perspective. But beyond just the services, the preservation of the historic landmark itself, maintaining the mooring equipment, dredging at our own expense, and I say own because, full disclosure, I am a member of the club, launch service to Transient, fuel at a great expense to the club that spent quite a bit of money updating fuel and the system and the fuel filters, etc., free pump-out facilities, youth sailing for the broader community, the entire community, and really the safety and the scores of people that have been assisted, recreational boats, have been assisted, and as well as those in distress and lives have been saved. So I want to make sure that it is known that the club is what it does and what services it provides to the broader good. And that I think that for today's meeting, I think that we should be in a position where we go back to the yacht club, and then all those with additional comments that we have, a meeting before we have our next meeting, at least if there is any extended period for comments by the general public, that we sit down, or the club sit down with the commissioners, and we talk about this. I do think that the unintended consequences are not allowing the club to operate in a way that benefits our members, that pays fees and pays the fees for the mooring tackle, et cetera, to be there, and for the economics of, supporting the harbor. I just can't think of any other way of saying it. But, I think that we need to have additional comments here, and I'm sure we will. And, for the record, there has been some stuff that has been submitted, and I'm sure you'll get more from that perspective. I just want to go on that perspective.
This is Harry, and I would say, we've been working together with the club as the town of Fairfield and the club. The club does the mooring and maintenance, and it's a partnership.
Well, I think
Harry, that's a great comment, and I think that what I think has been lost, and this is as a newbie, and if I may, I just see that there's a bit of friction between the club and HMC, and I want to make sure that we address that. I mean, we've got a new administration, new board, new chair, new Commodore, new harbor master. We should be able to all work together here, especially in this section. So I just want to add that the partnership is strained, and we need to just, for the record, work together. When we get onto this online mooring system, it's sort of like working at a Fortune 500 company, which I do. We come out with a new technology platform, and it's a customer relationship management system or something that is really going to improve and create efficiency so we can serve our clients. That's no different than what we're doing here. But once you get into the reality as a user and the frustrations you have, it does cause some problems. This is absolutely what we need to do and to get to that point. But there are pain points here, not just on this document itself, but using a new system. And there's a learning curve here. And we want to make sure that we do everything we can to help people, all the stakeholders in the harbor, about how to use the system and who our major constituents are to service the entire harbor. And that's part of the fairness doctrine that I see. So that's my last comment.
Yeah, we all have to work together.
Go ahead, Sam. Go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to underscore what Sam was saying. I think that the yacht club gives so much to the community and this harbor, and I think that they should be included in a discussion regarding how this is to be worked out, and before anything is set in stone. So I just want to make my point clear on that.
Well, Eric, this is Kim. I would suggest that we have a commission that's got more members from the yacht club on it than members from the public. So that is the purpose of this meeting, is to get input from folks who might be willing to represent the club's position. We do everything in the light of day here, and we can certainly sit down with anyone, but we can't do kind of meetings that exclude the public. So I think that.
I understand that, but I think that this isn't an area where it affects both parties, and I think that they probably need a voice at the table so that they can share concerns and how things will affect them.
Well, I guess
for that particular.
And I agree. I mean, certainly the yacht club is a phenomenal resource for boaters in this area, and I don't know where the harbor would be without them, frankly. But I'm simply pointing out that you and Sam and Jack and Mark and Doug are members of the yacht club. So this is the first step where the yacht club and the public are sitting down to have a conversation about this rule and to acknowledge the good work that they've done and that they we hope will continue to do. And I guess I'm confused about why we would have to go out beyond this meeting, beyond who we have on the commission, in addition to the public comments that we've gotten from the Commodore and from the harbor chair of the yacht club. This is an opportunity to speak up, and if we have to, as I said at the outset, if we have to meet again, we will certainly meet again. But it seems to me that all positions are, all involved parties are represented here at our table.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
I look forward to your comments.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think that's more for the record. And I go back to Harry, who just said, it is about a partnership, and it's one that spans 30 years. My stepfather was the head of the Harbor Commission at the very beginning of this, the issues that we have with the Army Corps of Engineers, and there was, great spirit in the harbor of working together and making it better. And it's my understanding, fact versus feeling, that feeling being that we have been recognized as a model harbor, and we don't have, or does not believe we have, a contentious sort of relationship with the yacht club. But it's very important that we do what we can to make sure that we keep the yacht club as a viable organization that thrives and does what it does. And again, speaking as a commissioner, I'm very, very happy to have a resource like Pequot Yacht Club for the broader community. And I bring up the youth sailing piece. I mean, that is a huge part of what we do and our contribution to the community, and want to do whatever we can to make sure that they get their word in, and as well as involving the club manager and the harbor committee chair. And that should be another meeting or another call or whatever for additional comment that can come back. But I think we should all get back together on this. But, I mean, yeoman's work has been done here, Jack and Kim, in terms of updating these rules and regulations. I just want to make sure that the spirit of the fairness doctrine and the guiding principles that you laid out at the beginning of this call, that we follow them, and that it isn't punitive to one party versus another. That's all.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just it's so interesting and been involved for so long as Jeff, but I think we can also understand that the yacht club, I think, has a different standing in this matter than the general public does, because the harbor management plan specifies certain responsibilities and set forth the recommendation for what's taken place here. So at the time, the defederalization of that anchorage was quite contentious, and there were interests who opposed that because it was supposedly for the public, but it was recognized that the yacht club needed a certain number of mooring spaces for its viability, so that it was agreed that we would pursue the defederalization, which by itself was complicated. It wasn't just because we had to go to work with the congressional delegation to get an act of Congress. And then in exchange for that, there was an agreement signed, a legal agreement between the town's first select men at the time and the Commodore of the Yacht Club, specifying that in exchange for the defederalization and the ability to utilize that area with state and federal permits, the yacht club would provide certain services to the assist the commission with management of the harbor and provision of boating services, and that's essentially the partnership. So it's more than just a voluntary partnership. There's a legal basis for it, and I don't know. So we don't want to lose sight of that, and I think when the committee I know that the committee recognizes all of this when crafting this language, and hence the discussion of it now to figure out what the best way is to proceed. But it's more than just a voluntary partnership. There are legal agreements that are in place here that we have to recognize and maintain.
Yeah, and this is Doug. I appreciate the dialogue here, and Kim, you brought up that there are members of the committee who are also members of the club. I would offer in this circumstance that I think in matters where the Pequot Yacht Club is a party to an agreement, whether it's these mooring rules or possibly other agreements over time, as Jeff has said, that the members here on the committee may be part of the club's governance or may not be, but I don't think in the role in the committee here they're acting as officials of the governance of the Pequot Yacht Club, and that we make sure there are opportunities where Pequot Yacht Club is a party to a rule or an agreement, that the club has the opportunity, at least through its governance structure, to take official positions or work through matters. And so previous to voting, I think there should be some collaboration there, that it could be appropriate to, not use just a meeting like this for it, or alternatively to invite Pequot Yacht Club to participate, but in an official capacity.
Yeah, Jack, I think what I heard was that just that coordination needs to be done in a public meeting, not privately. It needs to be done with sunshine.
We definitely need to have representation from Pequot Yacht Club. It's just not a part of any of us being members of the club that are on the commission. We want to make sure that the commission has a seat at the Pequot Yacht Club has a seat at the table in discussing anything relating this. And that's all I'm asking, because I think that is what is it's appropriate. I mean, it's obvious that it needs to, and it shouldn't just be relied upon members of the commission. It needs to be done formally, because they are a different party, and they're a party of the situation. So that is what I think the Harbor Management Commission should be doing, especially for this item.
In the light of day, Jack, as you said, and with the public, not in private. I don't know if there has ever been an instance where it has been done in private without the representation from both the HMC, the club itself, and other stakeholders. But, we can assure that this thing is, like you said, that is in the light of day or sunshine or whatever. But, just looking at the letters that have been submitted, I think we should be in a position where we go back together and come forward with an alternative language, or just, as Jeff said, there's legal precedent here. So we should obviously use that as our guiding principle as well.
Other commissioners? Any comments? Any other concerns?
This is Harry. As I said before, we all have to work together, and they can be open to being a part of any of these committees as well. What?
Well, we do have, as I mentioned earlier, we do have 3 letters from Yacht Club members who are very concerned about this 20B, and in one of the letters, the letter from Chris Smith and Devin Santa, there were 2 alternatives that they suggested. One was basically to continue the practice that they've been that they've had up to now. The second was to change the mooring rules so that the commission would issue 51 permits for 51 mooring balls, and that the yacht club manager would be assigning boats to those 51 moorings, and presumably managing the making sure that the registration and insurance documents, et cetera, that are required were that he had access to those documents.
It would be my understanding that they've been doing that for years.
No, that the system that they've been using, which is to allow moorings that are freed up because someone has taken off for a longer cruise or a long vacation, that someone else would comes in and uses that mooring temporarily. That's one suggestion, and that's what they have been doing. The second suggestion was that instead of the harbor master issuing 51 individual yacht club members a mooring permit in the spring, that in the spring the harbor master simply issue 51 mooring permits to the yacht club, and the yacht club would make the decision about who goes where, and the town would not have an independent record of who was on the moorings. The yacht club would make all that decisions, and presumably, as other boats came in the course of the summer, people would be moving around in the North Anchorage.
Okay.
So instead of issuing a mooring permit to a person, the yacht club, the mooring permits would be issued essentially to the mooring balls.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. I would feel a lot better if I could have some kind of confidence that before the next meeting that there's a formal meeting with all stakeholders, especially on this particular topic, so that scenarios like this could be discussed, so that it's a more meaningful and more definitive outcome for the language that is going to be for this item.
Sure, we can certainly do anything that the commissioners want, but this is an opportunity for the commissioners to comment on either of those proposals.
I'm not really clear. Did that answer my question? I mean, is that something that we will do?
Well, we will certainly sit down and get feedback from everybody who wishes to comment, and certainly have conversations with people who are interested in having conversations. We cannot have a private meeting with anyone. We're a public body, and every meeting that we have with members, more than two commissioners and members of the public, have to be noticed and have minutes and be recorded. So we can do that.
I mean, I just want to know, how do you get feedback and decisions? I mean, why can't a committee meet with a stakeholder to discuss? That's not allowed, or why can't it be in public?
Please ask the first select woman. I have talked to the town clerk, and what I repeated to you about two commissioners plus a member of the public has to be noticed, recorded, and minutes. I'm not trying to prevent anything. I'm simply telling you what the rules are, what my marching orders are.
I'm just trying to be clear. I mean, they're a major stakeholder in this situation, and just a submittal of a letter or a private conversation over the phone. I don't know if you're saying it's got to be public in the open. Then I guess we need to have a public meeting then, if that's the formality. But I think that we need to feel comfortable of the transparency of a dialogue between them and the Harbor Management Commission.
But I don't think anyone is suggesting that we have a private meeting. I think we're happy to meet publicly.
Publicly is fine. Yeah, whatever it takes, whatever it is,
and whatever it
so
takes,
that both parties can understand what's happening.
But
right, and I mean, like I said earlier on it. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Sam. This is Jeff. My thought was that one of our meetings, the yacht club had a proposal that was being reviewed by the commission, which was for the mooring floats, and in that instance, since that was the topic of a topic on the agenda of that meeting, the representative of the yacht club was unmuted and could present the application and answer questions. If we're talking about this mooring related matter, and we are talking, I think, about in part the effect of perhaps this rule change on the memorandum of agreement, which is an agreement involving the yacht club and the town, could there not be a provision at that meeting, not for the general public to be unmuted, but for the representative of the yacht club to be unmuted and engage in a discussion with the commission?
That would be a great idea.
Just my thought.
So we would have to have probably another special meeting.
And just
to do that, which we can certainly do.
As I said, Kim, I think that in terms of, I guess the comments that I made at the beginning with regard to exhaustive public comment, the more the better. The town would, I'm sure, applaud or will support any additional public comment if necessary in light of special circumstances surrounding COVID and our inability to create the forum for open public comment. But if we probably, we can't vote on anything today, or from Robert's rules, I'm not sure if we can propose another date for public comment, and specifically to put Pequot Yacht Club on the agenda, and others for that matter. I mean, I guess you would go to the town clerk, go to Betsy or the first select woman and ask her representative. Excuse me, I forgot her name, but I don't see where there would be pushback there. But I think that how do the commissioners feel about it? Do they think that's we have a motion for there to be further dialogue in another additional public forum or public hearing to allow the yacht club to state their position, or any other stakeholder for that matter.
Well, we can't. You're right. We can't vote on anything tonight, but we have a meeting in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We have a meeting in 2 weeks, and we can vote on things in 2 weeks.
And then maybe that's it. By that time, we'll have additional public comment, and we can do some further due diligence. Obviously, there's 30 years of history here, and things have been adjudicated, and there is legal precedent. Why don't we, if we at our next meeting, we can vote on a motion to have an additional public comment. But I guess we can't vote on that today, and we can't talk about it. But I would hope there was a plurality of commissioners that would agree for something of that sort, for that kind of forum.
Of course.
Well, we can look at it. Will be on. We can put it on the agenda for next week, for 2 weeks from today. We can certainly do that, and we can decide. We can decide at that meeting how we're going to manage the next meeting.
And then, Kim, again, I'll try to stop talking. There's also the consideration of the time period or the schedule for getting the rules and procedures revised and implemented prior to the next boating season.
Right.
Because there's a requirement for posting the notice of a public. There needs to be a public hearing prior to adoption of any changes, and that requires a notice period. And then they become effective after publishing the revisions in a newspaper, and in this case we could substitute the town website.
Yeah, we don't have to use the newspaper.
So there's the consideration of the time period for getting everything completed as well. But that doesn't mean that we still want to do the best possible job on this.
Well, we have a meeting in 2 weeks where we will be freer to make decisions, and I don't know what else to suggest.
But
would it
work out
would
that,
it make?
I'm sorry.
Would it make sense to formally write a letter to or an email to Pequot Yacht Club to invite them to be in attendance, so that we can get all of their input and come to an agreement?
We could, yes.
I mean, I don't think on behalf of the Harbor Commission that we have excluded them, but maybe we have to
Well, I think
do
they
a
feel that
formal
we've excluded
invitation
them.
to them.
Right.
I mean, I don't think anybody's purposely excluded them, but evidently on their side they do feel that way.
Right.
And so we need to maybe formally invite them to participate.
Okay.
But I'll try to stop talking. But after going through all this today, it seems that the only section for additional discussion and modification is 20B. All of the rest of the rules and proposed rules and procedures seem to be with some. I think a couple of instances we had to tighten up the language, but that all we're talking about really is Rule 20B,
right.
And that could be. I think that could be worked out through another meeting, in my opinion. But and then the whole thing could go forward. It's not like we're trying to revise the whole document.
Right.
No. Right.
Well, it may be that we can even, I don't know how, we can't vote on anything tonight, but perhaps we could set aside some time at a regular meeting on the 20th to consider invite the yacht club to speak then, so that we don't, so that we move things along pretty quickly. Whether or not we can reach a consensus of and make a decision at the meeting on the 20th, but at least if they're present, if we can figure out a way to invite them to unmute because we have an agenda item that's specific, we get permission to do that, we can at least hear from them and perhaps make a decision on the 20th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, you have the prerogative for that to invite comment from the public.
So why don't we plan to do that? Well, it'll be on the agenda. We will, when we reach that agenda item, we will have them unmute, and we will then address the issue of 20B.
I think it would just be very helpful so that we are able to hear real stuff that's happening that we may not be aware of, and can understand things more clearer, especially if some of us that are not there all the time or sees what happens in the summertime, what works, what doesn't, just before language gets approved. I think it's just an important thing that we should do. So I appreciate that.
Okay. Any other comments? Jack, do you want to?
I'm sorry, Kim, what did you say?
Do you want to? So I'm sorry. So we will do that for our meeting on the 20th. We will put this Rule 20B as an agenda item and have Pequot be present. But there's one more little to go back to the rules themselves. There's one more change, is there not?
Yeah, on 15, there's I think folks will agree, a fairly modest change on the emergency requirements, suspension of requirements in the case of emergencies, and the subcommittee thought it would be good to add a new one, which will make sense to everybody. Public health or public safety emergency is another reason that an emergency may be caused. I assume that's not controversial to add that.
That's a good one.
See that middle of page 15, a new bold edit. Any comments on that? Kim, if no comments, that includes me trying to run us as quickly as I could through the proposed changes to the rules and procedures.
Excellent. Commissioners, any comments, any conclusions, any?
No, thank you very much. That was a great presentation.
Kim, I have a question for you.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that we're being thorough and we're not missing any stakeholders. If we invite Pequot to comment at the October 20th meeting, I think the answer to this question is no, but are there any other stakeholders that we need to offer a similar invitation to make sure that we're not missing a party or favoring one party over another?
I worry about that.
I just want to make sure we're not opening the door for someone else to say later on that Pequot was given the opportunity to comment at one of our meetings, but our organization or I personally wasn't.
I worry about that, Ted. And I will run that by Betsy Brown and see what she says. But I do worry about that. We did get a number of letters, as you saw, comments. But generally speaking, most of it was from Pequot members. And you know, the harbor master sent that email to folks who not only have moorings and are on the wait list, but who have docked vessels and, in some cases, who are waterfront property owners. So, but I'm sure there are others who might like to comment, and I really don't know how to ensure that those who wish to be heard can be heard, short of them sending an email to the commission and saying, I'd like to be heard ahead of time.
Mm-hmm. Kim, could you not talk with Betsy about the crafting the agenda item so it's specific to the yacht club's requirements under the memorandum to provide boating services in exchange for their use of the anchorage, and that really makes them stand apart from other groups, I would think.
Sure, that's a good idea. I can try that.
That's the point that I was trying to make, in that I think if Pequot is a party to a memorandum of agreement or something else, then it might draw a distinction.
Sure, because 20B affects the use of the anchorage, and the use of the anchorage is the basis of the memorandum of agreement, and the services that the yacht club provides. So I think that's what sort of
but Jeff, I think Ted's point was that aside from Rule 20, there are all these other rules that members of the public may have equally strong feelings about and should be given the same right to comment. And that's, I think Kim is right. We should check with the clerk's office and see what can we do to make sure we're hearing from people who have feelings about any of our rules before they get voted on.
Yeah, it does just seem to me that while other members may have something to say, that the Harbor Management Commission and the Harbor Master and Pequot Yacht Club are the only parties that are named in these rules and agreements. And so they do have a distinction there in the same way as the Harbor Management Commission. So the public has a forum to be invited to participate, but in this case, it's a very specific party that's defined.
Right.
So I think there should be a pathway for it.
I hope so. I certainly hope so.
I think Betsy will help.
Okay.
Yeah.
So any other comments, concerns?
Well, for what it's worth, I'm not familiar with any other Harbor Management Commission that's given as much attention over the years to mooring rules and regulations as this commission has, and has given the time and the thought into doing something that serves the public interest through these rules and procedures. No other commission has done this. They have rules and procedures, and occasionally they may update them, but not with the same attention as this.
Thanks, Jeff.
Great.
Well, good work, everyone. If there are no other comments, good work. Our next meeting is on the 20th. You will be getting the agenda and any other comments that come in from the public via our email about this meeting. I'll include those with the agenda and the invitation to join the phone meeting.
Hi, everyone. Christine Vitale, just on the call. I just wanted you to know before I go on mute.
And I think that's our signal, commissioners, to sign off.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. No, we went late, so we're done, and we're adjourned until the 20th of October. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night
Okay,
all.
Kim. Thanks. Good night, Kim.
Ellen, it's Meredith. Are you on?
She might be. This is Mark Schweitzer.
Oh. All right. Hey, Mike.
She caught the tail end of the commission also.
Yeah. That's a heck of a long meeting.
4:45? Yeah.
Mark, we never got the invoice from Diversity in time?
I got it at 4:45 this afternoon.
Right. Okay.
Hi, everyone. It's Christine Vitale. Just want to let you know that I was on the call.
Hi, Christine. I think
I interrupted the last meeting.
Yeah, we all did. Yeah. That was confusing.
I thought it was you guys. I'm like, hi, I'm here.
Maybe that's why they wrapped it up.
They were like, oh, I guess that's a hint. I'm like, sorry. But I was like, okay, commissioners. I'm like, oops. I didn't guess I should have listened to what you were saying before I just jumped on in. Well.
I'm not sure who's on this yet, but I know. Hi, Ellen, is that you? Yeah.
Hi, this is Ellen on the line. Who's present?
Meredith, Mark, and Christine so far that I know of. Ellen, I think when I logged in, it said that it was already recording. I don't know if that's true or not.
That's what I heard too. So it's Mark, Christine, who else?
Meredith.
Yeah. Okay. So just us. All right. That was so weird, wasn't it?
Yeah. I don't know if you want to stop the recording and then start when we actually start the meeting.
Okay. Let's see how we do that. Okay, so let's see. This is the Roger Sherman Building Committee, October 6th, 7 p.m. This is Ellen Marks. Go ahead, Eric.
And this is Eric Lang, the chairman of the building committee. The meeting is now called to order. First item on the agenda is an update from Colliers on the number plates, construction financial status report. Mark, take it away.
Yep. Mark Schweitzer, Collier's Project Leaders. Pretty simple. The on the number of plates for the lockers that just got replaced. I have not heard back from the Penco rep out of Massachusetts. I did hear from PSI last week, and told them what the holdup was. They asked what the numbers were that they needed to get. So I sent them the information on what locker numbers they needed to get, and I told them, the plan was, we're holding the payment till we get the numbers, or we're going to order them and back charge it, and then you can take it out of Penco's money. I contacted them again. I have not heard back from them. I'm going to give them to the end of the week and give them the ultimatum that at the end of the week we're just going to order them, back charge them, even if they get them. So we'll have resolution by the end of the week. We should be able to get locker numbers for less than $2 per with the shipping and handling, and we need 72 of them. So it's less than $150. So that is where we're at with the locker numbers. As far as the construction, A&R had wired the duct smokes, or they installed the duct smokes on Saturday. They came back yesterday without telling anybody, and they were not let in. So they were back there today to wire the duct smokes. Fire tech will be there. They're the fire alarm sub to them. They'll be there tomorrow to basically code it and install it, and then basically the duct smokes will be completed by the end of tomorrow. The units are, as diversity reported, under BMS control. I haven't had a chance to confirm with Sal, but Sal, have your techs been able to log in remotely and control the system?
I haven't been able to catch up with my tech. I have one that's been out on an injury, so we've been running short. We'll check on that again tomorrow. I do know that they talked, one of them did touch base with the controlled air technician that was there, I believe, yesterday. So I know that there was at least a phone conversation. But as far as verifying that we can get in, we have not done that.
Okay. I mean, we'll do that till, we have a meeting tomorrow, so we can go over that with them tomorrow. Hopefully we have that answered. And as far as the financial status report, it remains the same. There have been no other change orders to date. They have not gotten us anything on the T&M tickets for the wiring of the panels. So as of right now, the only change orders have been as previously reported. And that concludes.
Have they given any indication as to where we stand with the estimate that they had quoted, or on the NTE number?
When we spoke last, they were still vetting A&R's tickets. I guess A&R.
Okay.
I have a feeling that A&R was trying to get some contract work on T&M tickets, and they are having their issues with them trying to get them off. Would be my guess.
All right.
Mark, last time I was on one of the OAC calls, there was discussion about the lights and the stage. Do you have an update on that?
Lights are required up there for the school and how they function. They use that as a classroom. We are in the process of getting a price for a new lamps to go up there, not just A&R, the electrical sub, will not take responsibility for the existing lights, rewiring the existing lights. So they are in the process of giving us a individual light that they can wire up there.
And would that be the same kind of stage lighting that they're replacing?
No, it would be individual 2x2 or 2x4 fluorescent lights. I mean, the lights that got taken down was a consecutive bar of basically 1x4 fluorescent lights, but it's all threaded rotted together and pieced together that way, and they didn't. And it was, it's a light bar that has been up there for a bit, and they didn't want to take responsibility to try to rehang it or try to wire it back. So we told them to give us pricing for individual lights so that stage can function as essentially a classroom.
But what about, Sal, are you comfortable with it just functioning as a classroom as opposed to like that bar of lights with different colors on it if you ever wanted to actually use it as a stage?
My understanding was that the colored lights were not we're going to have more conversation on this. My understanding was there wasn't a problem with the color lights. It was a problem with the fluorescent lights from 1960, and that's what they were offering us wanting a replacement for. So I think we're going to have a little bit further discussion on that at tomorrow's OAC.
Okay. I cannot be on that call tomorrow, but I think you're probably of the same ilk, Sal. I just want to make sure we're putting back what we had before. So if we had stage lighting before, I think it's important to leave this project having stage lighting.
Correct. I agree with you.
Okay.
And Mark, is that your understanding that the colored lights are okay and are to be put back, and it's just the fluorescents, or is that still unclear?
The fluorescent lights is the discussion. I don't believe the color lights were never in the discussion. What I saw down on the ground was the fluorescent lights, what they took down prior at the start of the project.
I see. So are the colored lights still up there then?
I believe they are, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so you guys will clarify tomorrow.
Yes.
Now, the drawings called for those 1x4s to stay? To remain?
It is diversity's contention that they were to remove them and not replace them or reinstall them. So,
okay. Is that what the drawings say? Or what did the drawings say?
I will let Dave weigh in on that. It was an early RFI that it was, my understanding of the response in the RFI was the drawings did not have for the reinstall.
I see. Okay. Okay.
Well, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll have to dig further into the topic to look at the language, but my understanding of diversity's contention or the contractor's contention is they kept saying that since the stage, you may all recall, the main work of the stage, converting that from a stage to a classroom was part of the alternate as we were building a new stage or platform. They have taken exception to other work associated in there, saying, well, that was part of the alternate. And we have made we have actually made the argument, and they've concurred, they've agreed after we made the argument on other ductwork within the space. We said if this work was part and parcel related to the installation of the new HVAC work, then it's part of your scope of work. If you needed to remove this or remove and reinstall something as a result of your new ductwork, then that's part of your scope of work. It's not excluded because the alternate was the excluded. The only part of the alternate that was excluded was the wall and the infill and, the conversion to a classroom. The HVAC that ran through there was always part of the work. So I think that's where they were parting ways and where they felt this was not part of the base bid scope of work. And our argument has been if it's related to the HVAC, then it is part of your work. You always knew you had to remove work to reinstall new work, and you had some obstacles in the way to get to that.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to further that conversation with them. But I recall a recent conversation on this, and we'll have to go back to see what's currently there and what's currently been removed.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if these were just taken down in order to install the ductwork, then they should either be put back in kind, or if they're not comfortable doing that, if they are offering to replace them new, that should be on them. No?
Yeah, unless there's, unless they're going to come. Yeah, I mean that's our position. Unless there's something that, as they began to take it down, it was beyond repair and something that they couldn't have anticipated. Then we would consider that as an unforeseen condition. But they'd have to demonstrate to us what is so obscure about this. And so if they took it down, it's beyond repair, then sure, then okay, then we'll just buy new lights and you guys just reinstall it. So we'll have to dig further into that. I don't think, correct, Mark, we don't have a change order in front of us to evaluate. Nope. So I think we'll just have the conversation tomorrow and report back to you.
Eric, can I ask a different question?
Yeah, please.
Can I just get an update, Mark? There was a small amount of abatement that needed to be done. I think Diversity was planning on doing it in a glove bag, and Fuss & O'Neill thought it was more of a full containment situation. And so where are we on that? And I think Sal's understanding was the abatement is owed to the project. Like, who's paying for it, and how is it going to be abated?
I did speak with Fuss & O'Neill on it. They did speak with Mike Sanders, who is the Department of Public Health up with the state. Mike Sanders did agree that under normal conditions, the amount of asbestos that is up there is a containment. But due to the nature that it's pipe insulation, that it's isolated to one run of pipe, that they can glove bag it, but Fuss & O'Neill will need to submit a alternate work plan to the state for Diversity to do it. So I do not have a cost on that, but I cannot see. We still have money left on Fuss & O'Neill's contract, which should cover the amount that they need to draft the alternate work plan and do the monitoring of the takedown.
Thank you.
And you're awaiting a price for that additional work from Fulton O'Neill, correct?
Correct.
The alternate work plan should be substantially less than a total confinement for Fulton O'Neill.
Yes. Especially being up at 18 feet in the air and, in full containment.
Yeah. You don't have to abate the whole area. Just take the whole thing out with 2 cuts and that's it. But one thing I would make sure we get is, again, chain of custody, which is very important for the town.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. We went through the financial status report. Any other questions for Mark from the committee? All right. Not hearing any. Moving along, next item on the agenda is an update from Silver Petrocelli on the construction and any new change orders. Dave.
Sure. Yeah, good evening, everybody. In terms of the update, the project is very close towards substantial completion. As you just heard, we think we're close to the system being operated and controlled through the BMS system. We are still awaiting the full balance reports, but sort of every indication shows that the systems are running, and any feedback that we have gotten is positive. We surely haven't heard of any any systems not running, but we need those balance reports obviously to evaluate and make sure that they're calibrated properly. So once we have that, we will officially issue substantial completion. Diversity has requested that from us. We've responded today, and let them know we need those in order to move forward. But John is ready to get his O&M manuals to us, so he is, he's moving towards final completion, which is good. As far as change orders, we do not have anything presented to us at this point. So beyond that, that's where we are. We have issued our punch list, which was relatively minor. So that's just sort of a testament to everybody working weekly and communicating. So that that's a good thing. There wasn't any major items on there, with the exception of some roofing details that we still need to review and get some feedback with Diversity on. There's some just connection details that we want to look at and closely. But beyond that, the system seemed to be working well and essentially substantially complete. But without that information, we can't validate that. So if there's any questions, happy to answer them.
I guess the big question is, that being said, when do you guys anticipate issuing substantial completion?
As soon as we get the balance report. Really, it's not going to take a lot of time to review that. But we do need that. We do need that to confirm that those airflows are correct. It still may be cool, but if the airflow is too high, then we're concerned about the acoustics in the room. You may recall we were, concerned about that as part of the design. But we need that report before we could issue substantial completion.
And that's the only open item as far as
with the exception of just the confirmation that the BMS system is working as intended and the owner does have access and use to it. So once Sal sort of confirms that with his team, that will really just be the validation of that piece. And then after that, it's the owner and maintenance manuals and other closeout contractual items we'll work with Mark on doing.
Okay. And it sounds like, based on what Sal said earlier, that they were continuing to do some balancing this afternoon or at least programming on the BMS. Is that, I guess, does anyone know which it was? So is the actual field work for the balancing complete, or is that still kind of ongoing as of today?
We can't answer that. Marty Cashin, our mechanical engineer, was out on Friday. He hasn't had any real correspondence with the group other than a couple emails going back and forth, so we're not sure of their daily work, yesterday and today.
Mark, do you have
my understanding of his A&R is the only one that was on site today, and he's the electrician.
Okay, so then are you of the opinion that everything has indeed been balanced, programmed, that the units themselves have been balanced, that everything has been programmed with the Fairfield Public Schools BMS system, and that we are now just awaiting the actual report?
That would be my understanding of it, because when I asked what the outstanding work was, the tab was not mentioned. It was, the duct smokes was really the only outstanding work that needed to be done.
Okay. All right. Can you just confirm it with Diversity tomorrow and see when they expect the balancing report to be complete and issued for final review by Silver Petroselli?
It's in my notes for tomorrow morning.
Thank you, sir. All right. Any other questions for Dave from the committee? All right. Not hearing any. Next item on the agenda is to hear, consider, and act upon the following. First item is the minutes of the regular meeting of September 15th, 2020. I will make a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll second. It's Meredith.
Thank you, Meredith. Any discussion from the committee? Not hearing any. All those in favor of approving these minutes say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry. Oh, thank you. All those opposed? Not hearing any. Any abstentions?
I don't think we heard from Rich. Rich, are you in favor?
Rich, are you still there?
I'm not sure.
Are you on mute? Okay. I guess put that as an abstention. I don't know how that works officially. All right. Okay. I don't believe there are any change orders to consider at this time. Mark, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Standing invoices. Just going to pull that up. Okay. We have 4 invoices this meeting. The first one is from Silver Petroselli, invoice number 20-2202 in the amount of $1,465. This appears to be the for about 5% of construction administration. I will make a motion to approve this invoice. Do I have a second?
I'll second. It's Meredith.
Thank you, Meredith. Any discussion from the committee? All right, not hearing any. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All of those opposed say nay. Not hearing any. Any abstentions? Not hearing any. Okay, I didn't hear Rich again, so we may have lost him. But I think we still have a quorum, so we can continue to vote, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I'm here. I don't know what.
There you are.
Yeah, I voted aye. I don't know why you can't hear me, but.
Okay.
Okay.
Now we got you.
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rich. Okay. Next invoice is from Collier's, invoice 7152 in the amount of $4,469. I'll make a motion to approve this invoice. Wait a second.
I'll second. It's Meredith.
Thank you, Meredith. Any discussion from the committee? Not hearing any. All those in favor of approving this invoice, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, none. Next invoice is from Bartholomew, invoice number 59155 in the amount of $4,528.74. I will make a motion to approve this invoice. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Can I just, what is that invoice for? I'm sorry.
Rich, this is for the flooring in front of the lockers.
Oh. Okay.
And
Mark, this is the amount we expected it to be?
Correct.
Thanks.
All right. Any other questions from the committee? All right. Not hearing any. All those in favor of approving this invoice, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. All those opposed? Not hearing any. Any abstentions? None. Okay. And the last invoice is from Fuss & O'Neill, invoice number 224524 in the amount of $637.85. I will make a motion to approve this invoice. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mary. I guess the only question, Mark, I have for you is the invoice. This is an hourly invoice for monitoring for, I think, previous glove bags, correct?
Correct. This is work that was performed in June for on the water line when the Yankee needed to put a grounding collar on the water line to receive their blessing from the billing official.
Got it. Okay. And you had previously stated that we still have, I guess,
over
funds
$2,000
that we previously allocated to them, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions from the committee? All right. Not hearing any. All those in favor of approving this invoice, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Right. Patrice, are you still there? I didn't hear your voice.
Yeah, I
earlier.
said aye. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. That is all of the invoices. The next item on the agenda is old business. So, Patrice, would you like to provide an update on the plaque and ceremony? Has there been any progress there?
Well, basically, the update is that, I recontacted Ms. Carpenter, and Sal was in on the emails, and the conclusion, Sal, is that we're going with this committee as is here tonight, and, then we have to decide on what other contributors. None of the other subcommittees or appointed parties have been, Sal, correct me if I'm wrong or right, nobody has stepped up and said we need to include additional phases.
Well, I wouldn't correct you if you're right. I'd never do that. I mean, I believe the intention was that you wanted to bring in the building committees on the plaque from the other phases, correct?
If they were so appointed was what the committee seemed to deem. They needed to have that as a specific task?
Oh, yeah. No, they did. I mean, the annex was built by the standing the Special Project Standing Building Committee, and that was, we'll call it phase one. That was assigned to special projects, so that was their job. They were, quote unquote, the Sherman Annex Building Committee.
And was there
then there was I'm sorry, they did not put up a plaque for themselves.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Although they could have. The second phase was, again, with special projects. Same thing. I gave Jennifer the dates that the Board of Ed accepted the annex, the date that the building committees turned in for acceptance of the phase two. So we have a point where we know that Jennifer would have to look up the membership, Jennifer Carpenter, and we can put those names on the plaque, and along with a date. You can do phase one, special project building committee, these people, so on and so forth. So I think we got all the players that we want. Other associated people, the plaque's going to get very long if you start doing that.
Yeah.
And there's no rule book for it, truthfully.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look on the other plaques that Gerald provided for us, the building committee for the Riverfield School renovation did include at the bottom identification of the first selectman, the superintendents, and the principal. I would beg to leave out the superintendent and just identify the principal and the first selectman, but, because the principal is the appointee of the superintendent, and he did, sit with us all the time. So that would be my recommendation there. And furthermore, going beyond this, I would like to sit down with Gerald and just do the specifics of exactly get all the names correct so that I can bring it before the board so they can prove the names as correct, and then we can order it.
Okay.
So in order
Patty,
to achieve that,
right?
No, in order to achieve that, Ms. Carpenter has to get back to me with those details. She has not done that despite, calling.
Right.
So I will get to her again and tell her we need it, ASAP, and then I will call Gerald, who's on the line now, and set up a time where he and I can sit down and make sure it looks all right, and then hopefully I will present it before then at our next meeting.
Rich,
Patricia,
were you on?
Yes, I was just going to say, Patricia, I can probably assist you to a certain extent in getting the names of all the individuals that were involved in that.
Okay, that'd be great.
In those two things. Yeah, no problem at all.
Rich, were you chair of this special project for Phase 1?
No.
But were you on the special projects for Phase 1?
You know what? I don't remember. I'm sorry to say.
There's too many of them, huh, Rich?
Yeah, it's definitely Phase 2, and that was pretty substantial. I just we handle so many of them, special projects does, and they're small. So
that was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was. I'm sorry.
So
I just don't remember.
I think that that means that I have to rely on Jennifer Carpenter for pulling up the exacts. And like I said, I want to get that exact and spellings and all of that together so that Gerald and I can sit down and actually compose and get the plaque off to one of the vendors that he's familiar with. But I want to get all the information correct so for at the next meeting, we have a rough draft of what it's going to look like and even potentially the proposed cost.
You know what? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Rich.
Patricia, Sal, the gal that used to be in the office with Jennifer, who's no longer there, and she, what was her name? Remember?
That was, yes, I do. That was
Kathy Griffin.
Kathy.
Yes.
Griffin, yes.
Kathy Griffin would probably have all that stuff on files. She was pretty heavily involved in a lot of that stuff. I know she's no longer employed, but maybe the records are still there, and it might be something that Jennifer might be able to locate.
Because each year there's a directory that is made up of everybody that's on all the boards and commissions. So that narrows it down, and then she would just recheck the appointment file to make sure that nothing changed as of the date that we're looking for. So she has a little homework to do, but she should have everything.
Yeah, that should be the perfect source for that. I think my memory's right on that. Okay, good.
Okay, so again, I'll connect with Jennifer Carpenter and we'll get this nailed down.
And I can show up anytime you need, Pat. Or pretty much anytime you need. All right.
Okay, Rich. I need to get your number. Yeah. Meredith, if you could shoot me again a list of our committee members and numbers and emails, so I can do that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
I can give it to you right now if you want. I don't care. 203-521-9300.
Got it.
Okay, done.
Okay.
All right. Well, Patrice, thank you very much for your efforts in tracking all this information down and
trying.
Kind of spearheading this effort.
Yeah, I'm trying. The only glitch is, they don't let you in the office, so I can't keep walking up there and reminding her. So I do it email, and
right.
She's got quite a lot on her plate. But I have several meetings scheduled for other committees I'm on, so I should be in touch with her this next week.
Okay, great. Okay. Any other old business anyone like to bring up?
Just an FYI, Dr. Banner emailed us to say that he's on the line. He hears us, but we're not hearing him. So if you want to just put him as an attendee.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There he is.
Always late to the party. Sorry.
All right. I guess before we move on, since you were unable to communicate, Dr. Banner, is there anything you would like to weigh in on?
Not really, no. I heard the entire discussion from start to current, but we just, I think, take this moment to thank everyone for their work and their thoughtful time and effort on this project. It's much appreciated, not only by myself, but the entire Sherman staff and community and students. So, thank you for everything.
Absolutely. Not only us, but there's a lot of not only us on the committee, I should say, but between all the consultants and the contractors as well. I must say, this not over yet, but we're pretty close to the finish line, and I was quite pleased with really the performance of everyone top to bottom. So thank you. I'll second that. So thank you all for your dedication, and please, anyone who's not on here on this call tonight, please extend that to them as well. So with that, any new business anyone would like to raise?
Eric, can I just ask, generally myself, you and Rich share the OAC call responsibilities tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot be on it. Can you or Rich call in?
I can be on it tomorrow.
Okay. Thanks, Rich.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to tomorrow either. So,
okay, no problem. I got it 12. The next one I got is 12 o'clock tomorrow, so I can handle that easy. No problem.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Rich.
Okay, good night.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
No other...
Motion to adjourn.
All right. So, Rich, you made the motion. I'll
okay, good night.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night. Aye.
All right, goodbye.
Good night.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.